Today we are going to discuss about citizen engagement. We are normally talking a lot in regional development policies about the four strands of the ecosystem: the administration, the private enterprises, the academic, and as well the civil society. And it is more and more in the mainstream of our activities. However, to be honest, it's still not so clear about how we could effectively engage the citizen in our policies. And today we have the opportunity to have an excellent speaker and as well an excellent panelist. So the video is going to be recorded and seen, I'm sure, many times. So we will have Angela Simone, which is I'm going to give you first the recommendation. So please, as you know, we will switch off your microphones, and you should mute them in order to facilitate the speech and the clear noise. However, you are well encouraged to put any question or any comments that you may have in the chat, and as well I will give you the word later on to discuss that, because I think we are in a good group, in a nice group to share and to discuss. So, and be aware that the dialogue will be recorded. So we will publish that in YouTube, and we will take as well proceedings that we will share with you together with the slides of Ms. Simone. So as I told you, we are going to discuss about citizen engagement. That I think is the challenge I am Esteban Pelayo. Sorry, I didn't introduce you myself. The director of the EURADA, the European Association of Regional Development Agencies, and it is the challenge nowadays. So in the past, we were able to link the knowledge with more or less with the private industry. We were able to gather and to better make policies and to have representation of the companies. But still, this is the thing that we need to learn and to experiment. And I think it will be something in the governance of the ecosystem in the next years. And the territories of Europe that are able to do that better will have an advantage. And this is very clear, because they will mobilize the whole ecosystem of the territory. So we will have Angela Simone, she's the coordinator of the Horizon 2020 Transform project. And as well, she has a lot of experience on this type of issues in other European supported projects. She was co-leading the project Mosaics. She was as well advisor of Enlight. She was as well working, I think, in Supermorri, which is the mother of all the project on RRI for all of us. And she has been as well collaborating with the Fundazione Giano Bassetti. And she will explain us, as I told you, her vision about the citizen engagement with the experience of the project, and specifically apply to the case of Lombardia, which is very interesting for us. In order to initiate the dialogue, we always have two panelists. I'm sorry that today we have a last minute problem with the other panelists, and we will have the important one from my point of view, which is someone that brings us another practice about how things could work better in the territory. I will introduce you later, but we have the privilege to have Madame Sylvie de Prater with us, which is the head of attractiveness and the Third Industrial Revolution Department on the Council of Hauts-de-France. She has a lot of experience, practical experience about connect citizens with energy, citizen engagement and civil society engagement with energy. And one of the activities that she has done, or several of the activities that she has done, has been selected by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission as best practice for all of us. So we have one excellent speaker and one excellent panelist, and then we will initiate the dialogue. So without no more introduction, I would like to give the word to Angela Simone. Thank you very much again for being with us.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. I really would like to thank Esteban Pelayo and Giacomo Frisanco from EURADA for this kind invitation. It's really a pleasure for me and for Transform to be here and to share our experience so far in our project. I will go to share my my screen. Really. A brief introduction to myself and to my organization that I represent. I'm the International Initiative Scientific Coordinator of Bassetti Foundation. We are the coordinator of the Transform project. And Bassetti Foundation is a civil society organization working locally, a lot with local stakeholders, local policymakers, all the stakeholders related to research and innovation, but also we have a long experience in international activities on responsible innovation. The mission of Bassetti Foundation is to promote the principles and the practices of responsible innovation, mainly through stakeholder engagement and citizen engagement. Through Transform, we really ground our experience and we share our experience with other wonderful colleagues experienced in citizen engagement in trying to embed sound citizen engagement methodologies in 3 regions in Europe. We are part of this group of so-called territorial RRI projects. So we are a sibling project of Territory as well, and other project aiming at grounding and inserting RRI, responsible research and innovation, in territories across Europe through different methodologies, through different approaches. And the approach performed by Transform, foreseen and performed by Transform, is to integrating different kind of citizen engagement approaches and methods in 3 different regions. So we have one methodology for each of the 3 regions involved in Transform. In Europe, we are working with the territory of Lombardy region, and Bassetti Foundation is also the leader, the leading partner for the territory of Lombardy region. But we are also working with colleagues in Brussels Capital Region, and they are experimenting co-creation exercise in their territory. And we also have a collaboration and experience in Catalonia with our colleagues performing citizen science activities to be embedded in the policymaking, and in particular in activities connected to smart specialization strategy in Catalonia in Spain. We also have a really interesting mutual learning activity beyond the borders of the European Union. Since we have been collaborating with the CCPES project funded by the National Science Foundation in the United States. This is a project led by the Museum of Science in Boston, and they are working, like Transform, with several territories and with several communities across the United States, involving quadruple helix stakeholders in defining priorities and needs for communities to be cues to be actionable for policymakers in the cities, in these territorial settings in the United States, to produce better policies for the common goods. So we are sort of comparison and mutual learning, enriching mutual learning between our experience in Transform and this really, really nice approach performed by the CCP's project in the United States. But during my presentation, I will focus more on the Lombardy case experience, since I'm not only the coordinator of the project, but I'm really make some hands-on activities with the territory in Lombardy in Italy. So together with my colleagues from Lombardy region and Finlombarda, which is a regional agency owned, totally owned by Lombardy region, we are working on introducing a participatory research agenda setting approach in the strategic regional policymaking, especially in activities connected to the new smart specialization strategy that has been that was released at the very end of the 2020 and connected other strategic plan for the region, and in particular the so-called 3-year strategic research and innovation and technology transfer regional plan. As you know, there is this wide and broad framework made by the smart specialization strategy in the region, but each region has its own further strategic plans on specific topics, or more broad strategic plans to set the agenda and the priorities for the following years. And in the case of Lombardy region, there is this strategic years for 3 years with which on which we have been working for the Transform project. So the approach in Lombardy is the so-called participatory research agenda setting, which is not a very well-defined methodology, but it takes into consideration different approaches to with the objective of defining together with other stakeholders and presumably going beyond the usual suspects, so the usual stakeholder in research and innovation, and that means also citizens, in defining priorities, visions, constraints and needs coming from all the stakeholders and coming from the citizens in really setting the research agenda altogether. And of course, there are different approaches that can be taken into consideration, but for agenda setting, definitely a reliable approach is the deliberative democracy approach, the representative deliberative approach, which is the methodology that we have used in our context in Lombardy. Really looking into past experiences across the world, very well-known and tested experiences that several governments, several public administration have been already experienced. And we have, of course, also fought to exploit, to harness the potential of tools already in place in our region, in Lombardy, like a website called Open Innovation, very used by the stakeholders in the territory, and so to use as a sort of web platform to also engage with citizens in structured participatory processes. So the aim was, the main objective for us was to go beyond classic online consultation. Lombardy region, as I think most of the region, not only across Europe, have been experiencing the grounding of online consultation, so using a regional platform to involve stakeholders and citizens. And the European Commission has a long tradition, let's say, of online consultation. So it's really a method well-known and well-diffused. But we really would like to go beyond the online consultation, in which there is a sort of self-selection of the participant in this process. So it's, of course, open to everyone. By the end of the day, you will have mainly people that are already interested in these topics, already interested in this kind of processes, and stakeholders that are they have several motivations to engage with the regional authorities, but it's very difficult to really interact or to engage citizens, real citizens, in order to provide their opinions and their ideas in this kind of processes. So before entering into the details of the participatory process, I really would like to stress and to highlight what are the key principles of participatory research agenda setting that we have strictly follow in defining, designing, implementing, and evaluating our process in Lombardy, according to really key principles, key keywords for this kind of co-design approach. The first one is integrity. So when you really would like to run this kind of co-design approach, you really need to put in place high quality process with professionals that can really design and facilitate with expertise all these phases of the process. The second keyword is feasibility. So you really need to consider procedures, time constraint, and any other constraint that can come up in the policy making design in the territory in which you really would like to embed such processes. So it's really better to go small but go great instead of be too much ambitious and have a very popular process, like you know that in these last months, in this last year, there are these citizen assembly, climate assembly that are really well known, that they are really effective. But all these processes require time, energy, and resources, and sometimes you don't have regional authorities the time and the resources to conduct this kind of approaches. So it's better to really focus on something smaller when you have all the time to properly perform the process and to gather and analyze the recommendation stemming from the process and to insert in the policy making process instead of claiming to run a really high level and time consuming process. The third keyword is actionability. The aim of these processes is not to just involve citizens for the sake of involving citizens. So what is called a tokenism, and to say we have engaged with thousands of citizens, we have collected their ideas and opinions, and that's it. You really need to use what emerged from the participatory process, and use means elaborating and integrating the recommendation in policies, something that can be really useful and used by the policymakers. So the actionability is really fundamental for having good processes of citizen engagement. And the fourth, which is not less important, is transparency. So you really need to design and put in place mechanisms to communicate how the results have been used, but also to prepare some space, for instance, a web-based place to collect all the relevant info that can be useful for the participants in the process, but also for all the other citizens that are not part of the citizen engagement activity, in which they can really find all the material, all the information, and they know since the very beginning to the end how the recommendation, how the hints from the citizens have been used by the regional authority, by the public administration, and that have been transformed in a policy, in something useful for the public good. So having in mind all these really relevant principles, our goal was to engage Lombardy population and representative samples of the Lombardy population to define their social needs in order to shape around these social needs the 3-year strategic program for research and innovation technological transfer. We had long conversations, long dialogues with colleagues in the region to really set our specific goal and to be sure that the recommendation and the results of the processes would have been useful and actionable in the shaping of their policy. And so at the end, we set to identify the social needs of the Lombardy population as the basis of the new upcoming strategic program for research and innovation in the region. Why we decided for the social needs? First of all, because in the previous strategic program, social needs were at the very center of the structure of the plan, but they were presumed. There was no citizen engagement activities, so working on literature or other ins coming from other policies, other activity in the region, the needs have been just presumed. So the effort in Transform was to really identify directly from the voices of citizens the social needs of the population in Lombardy. And of course, identifying social needs means also build up around research and innovation priorities meant to respond to these needs. So research and innovation become a sort of response to the social needs, not the only one, but possible option of response to the social needs identified in the population. So from February to May of this year, we have structured the whole process of the participation in the context of Transform, and we defined two main stages. So first, quantitative stage, and a second qualitative phase in order to go in depth to one of the topics emerging from the previous qualitative exercise. Of course, also planning to have communication action throughout the whole process of the participation, a process that is still ongoing. So since Transform is at the end of the second year of its duration, and we will envisage a further year to conclude, to end up our activity, we will have a further exercise of participation with the Lombardy citizens. So this is the very first part of the process that we are running in Lombardy, and the communication, of course, is an ongoing activity that we are performing together with side by side with the activity of citizen engagement. So the qualitative phase was a survey designed by, of course, Bassetti Foundation, but together with all the other colleagues in the so-called Lombardy cluster, so the people working on the territory of Lombardy. But the survey takes into account a representative sample of the people, of the citizens living in the region. So involving approximately 1,000 citizens in Lombardy. The survey and the sample was calibrated by age, gender, geography, which are common categories for socio-demographic stratification of the sample of the population. But we also took into account other elements like geography in terms of living in rural or urban or suburban area, the presence of disadvantaged people or all people in the family, and also the dimension on the family unit, in order to assess if these other elements can have an impact on the responses and emerging and identification of specific categories of social needs. And we administered the survey both online and by phone in order to reach all the ages of the population, because, as you know, by phone can be an option more easily performed by a category of the population, but for instance, for a young generation can be more easily to respond to an online questionnaire. Again, we definitely had in mind the actionability of the usage of the results coming from this survey. And we shaped the question taking into account, of course, policies already produced by the region, but mainly the societal development goals, since we were really working on societal needs. After the stage of the qualitative stage and working on the results emerging from the survey, we went through the second phase, which was the organization of a deliberative workshop. And we selected as a topic to really collecting more information into details about a specific key topic for the policy in Lombardy. And the topic was just energy transition in Lombardy. We decided to select this thematic because, as you know, it's really key and really intertwined with key European and, of course, also national policies like Green Deal, but also Next Generation EU and national policy connected to Next Generation EU, which is called the PNRR in Italy. But also we relied a lot on the outcomes from the survey. It was really evident that all the broad range of the topics connected to environmental sustainability, climate change, were really really sensitive topics for the respondents, for the citizens involved in the survey. And also going beyond the really in line with the RRI approach, we really would like to discuss and dialogue with citizens about sustainability, not only in terms of a matter of technological responses, but really to really dialogue with them about what sustainability as a whole means, not only in terms of technological responses or options that can come from technological innovations. And as another reason why we decided to go for just energy transition in Lombardy as a topic for our deliberative workshop is that in the strategic plan, in the previous strategic plan, there was this definition of the energy transition at very high level. So we really needed to ground in the real life for the citizens in Lombardy what energy transition, what just energy transition means for the daily life of citizens in Lombardy. So again, to have a broad variety of perspectives and experiences and background from the citizens involved in the process, we went through a stratification and a random sampling of the group, even if, of course, really much more small in comparison with the numbers of the citizens engaged in the survey. We try to stratify the presence of the citizens according to different categories, again, gender, ages, geography, so to have a richness of perspectives at the table of the discussion in our workshop, which was a virtual table because we held this workshop at the very end of May. So in Italy, we were not in lockdown, but of course we had restriction and limitation due to the pandemic. So we decided to go for an online workshop, entirely online, for 1 day long on Saturday. Because of course you need to run these participative initiatives not in working days. And we ran for 1 day long, 8 hours workshop on Saturday with 18 citizens. To provide you a more significant details, it's really common for this kind of co-design participatory deliberative approaches to compensate citizens taking part in these processes. Compensate can mean providing them some voucher, but generally this kind of voucher are for oil voucher, Amazon voucher, and since we are in the responsible research and innovation project, we decided not to provide vouchers for citizens, but at the end to provide small payments for them. This is a tricky question, not in terms of compensating or incentivize their present through small payments or voucher, which is, as I mentioned before, it's really a common feature of these activities, because citizens can spend 3 hours, so not in, of course, in working hours, during Saturdays, during weekends, hours or even days to discuss with you in your participation process. So participation and deliberation require time. And so that means that you need to compensate their effort in being part of this process. But for a public administration, it's really, really tricky and complex pay citizens for being in, for participating in these initiatives. They don't have procedures to do it in an easy way. So we had an agency working with us in recruiting and supporting us in recruiting citizens, but also managing all these practical things. Since this was an online workshop, we didn't have any travel reimbursement cost, but also in the case if you run in person workshop, you need to consider also to reimburse travel costs for the people participating in your workshop. So we followed the classic structure of the deliberative workshop with initial phase, which is called the informative phase, in which you can convey material and information about the topic of your workshop, but also hosting experts that can provide information and presentation and can interact directly with citizens for a Q&A session. This is really, really important because the aim of this deliberative workshop is to produce recommendation, but especially to produce informed recommendations. So it's not collecting opinions. It's not the same goal of a survey, but you really would like to have also learning phase and peer learning phase among the citizens with different backgrounds, interact each other and exchange experiences, but also interact with experts that can provide reliable and neutral information about the technological or scientific topic around which your workshop has been organized. Then you have the discussion phase and the recommendation elaboration phase. In our case, but it's really suggested to have also this other smaller stage apart for evaluating for an assessment made by the participants about the structure and the quality of the process. So the results was a set of recommendations for the region, and all this recommendation, along with all the results of the survey, have been collected and used by the Lombardy region to be really inserted in the designing of the new 3-year strategic plan for research and innovation. What about the participation and the attendees at the workshop and the survey? We don't have any hints from the participant in the survey, but thanks to this questionnaire with the addressed to the participants to the workshop, we know, and it's quite classic with this kind of participatory exercise, that participants are really enthusiastic about the workshop and the opportunity to be involved by the region to provide opinions and recommendations, and so to be part of the policy-making process. So they really feel the ownership of being part of this process. So this is the website that we have built up for communicating throughout the duration of the process, all the activities, what are the results, and this, as I said before, really was really fundamental for the process. A couple of things to end up my presentation. In this process, we really relied on the example, structured example, and guidelines from reliable sources. And one of these was definitely OECD, which is preparing already, is preparing a set of a series of materials on deliberative democracy. In the context of Transform, we have also translated in Italian some of the reports, because we think that for policymakers and politicians in our country is really important to have documents and guidelines in their own language. Could be really useful to have this material to be really easy to be consulted, to be used. And as I said before, we are planning the next step, take into consideration what we have made so far in this first part of the participatory process, perhaps being more ambitious, so going for sort of more structured citizen assembly on some of the topics emerged from the survey and included in the strategic plan in the S3 in Lombardy. I really would like to mention some few words about the importance of citizen engagement, as also Esteban mentioned at the very beginning of this meeting today. Citizen engagement is really, really key in all the European policies nowadays, and of course, to all the connected local policies. We definitely found elements of citizen engagement in the European missions. Citizen engagement is at the very center of the 5 bold, ambitious missions in Horizon Europe. Citizens have been involved, will be involved in the definition, in the implementation activities of the mission, but also in evaluating together with all the other stakeholders the efficacy and effectiveness of the mission. So this is something quite new and really, really important to be part in the agenda setting, in the implementation, but also in the evaluation phase. Citizen engagement in cohesion policies is again really relevant. There are some action pilots promoted by DG Region in the context of cohesion policy to really address citizen engagement approaches. And citizen engagement was one of the 4 topics of the just past Week of Region and Cities events. So I think this is a really a good signal that citizen engagement is becoming more and more important also in the context of the cohesion policy. And we have the experience of the conference on the future of the European Union through a blended activities with the online platform and the citizens panel they are running in these last weeks. And then we also have seen the born of this brand new JRC department, the Competence Center on Participatory Deliberative Democracy, to support policymakers to have not only science, good science, as JRC always say, good science for better policy, but also support in participatory deliberative democracy for better policies. And yeah, I think from my side, that's it. I'm really glad to listen to you, to listen the discussant and your comments, and I open to your question that if you would like to know more about Transformer, our activities.
Thank you, Angela, for this nice presentation. You were from the general to going to the principles. I took a note about integrity, traceability, actionability, and transparency that I never saw. And then you explain us the details as well, which is very useful for the people who want to know really to implement the survey to 1,000 people and the online workshop to 18. I don't know if you have any burning question before we enter in with the discussion. I have one related to the manuals that you have translated from OECD to Italian. I think you are right. We need to prepare our policymakers to these new tools. Which are the manuals do you have selected? Is to propose to other people to read them and to translate?
It's the first of the series because OECD is really preparing a series of a report. And so we started with the first one on the guidelines of good deliberations. So there is an extended version because they started from experience across the world and analyzing all the good experience across the world in deliberation. And then they really gathers all these experiences to select a bunch of guidelines, of good guidelines to implement sound process of deliberation. So we started from them. We are thinking about translating all the other reports. Yeah. We were very lucky because, of course, we work with people that are good in English and interacting with all the other colleagues because they are part of European projects, but we know quite well that at least in Italy, it's not so easy for all the policymakers to understand English, and this could be also a good excuse not to use the good suggestion in this kind of report. So we have provided them with this Italian translated report so they can easily put in place what they can find in this report. But just a couple of days ago, OECD, for instance, released another report on how to evaluate these processes and how to institutionalize all these mechanisms, because there are several approaches of deliberation, how to institutionalize to be so a part of a democratic process, all these mechanisms of deliberation. But definitely this is something at the later stage. You first need to initiate and to implement this approach, and then you can really think about institutionalize all these mechanisms. But yeah, all these reports are really definitely available for everyone who would like to experiment with deliberation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Angela. I don't see any question in the chat. Someone wants to say something? If not, we could go to Madame Sylvie de Preter. She's from the regional government. We say Council of Hauts-de-France. Is our neighbors in Brussels. We feel like that. So
yes, neighbors to Brussels more than Barcelona.
And she's working in the in the department in charge of third industrial revolution. In particular, she is in charge of energy transition and connected with that with citizen initiatives. She has been trained in economic management, local development, and planning. Her previous position were in as well in public or local development about energy transition, sustainable development, gender equality, which is as well very important when we are talking about energy transition and participatory democracy, which is something that we used to make and now we are talking about that. So thank you for being the discussion and to give us your views and your ideas about what you have heard and your experience, accordingly with your experience in Hauts-de-France. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. It's always interesting to hear how other regions deal with this issue. What the experience we have here is quite different to what the colleague has just explained. It's not a matter of getting the public involved in a strategy. It's more trying to get them to carry their own initiatives related to energy transition. We have been leading a public policies at large around transition since 2013 thereabouts, but with an angle more towards companies, private companies, technological innovation, stuff like that. So leaving aside, so to speak, the general public in terms of trying to inform them, trying to convince them, and trying to encourage them to take initiatives. So that is something we've been trying to mend for the past few years. Obviously, there's levels, as you know, being professionals in the subject, there's levels into which you can get the public involved. Obviously, there's a matter of building awareness in whatever is related to climate change or energy change transitions. Because it's the change of the way we behave, the way we consume, the way we produce, and etc. So there's a lot of building awareness that's involved. There's a lot of initiatives that we encourage, taken by local governments, taken by non-government organization in the shape of trying for them to change their the way they use things, like, for example, the way they would bring their children to school, for example, by walking or by entrusting other parents to walk them to school rather than take their cars and whatever. So we've been encouraging that and co-financing stuff like that for a number of years, either through my department or through other departments in transport or urban transport, in climate planning, stuff like that. A lot has been done into that change of practice, so to speak. But what we've been trying to set up in my department in the past 3 years is rather trying to go beyond that and try to find ways into getting people to take their own initiatives in the matter of transitions at large. Actually, the first lockdown in France due to COVID was in March 2020. And that was a lesson in the way we build our policies, in a way, because we found out that the lockdown was much more severe than the other lockdowns that followed. And people have had to manage their own way into supporting one another, into getting food supplies, because everything was locked down except supermarkets. So local producers, for example, were left aside, and some initiatives were taken by local communities to make sure that their local producers were not left aside, and etc. And so we studied that, and we found out that a lot of private citizens' initiatives were taking in the fields of, obviously, things that were connected to them directly in their daily lives. So food provision, waste, transportation, energy. It was the same subjects came around, which is luckily subjects into which we are building public policies. So we tried to set up a way into helping them develop their own initiatives. Obviously, we are a region of 6 million inhabitants, so we cannot support financially possibly 6 million initiatives. So the issue was how to help them, how to make sure that not everyone would be reinventing the wheel in their own communities or villages, but not taking up their initiatives or sort of organize them outside their own hands. So what we did was identify thematic non-government organizations that we would finance, and that would who would create tools for people who wanted to set their own initiatives to relate to support them at the beginning, at the early days of their initiatives, and to get them together regularly, so as to get to know one another, to sort of step further every time. And also that was a help for us as well, because in the sense that they would watch for whatever new initiative was coming through, and what was required from us as a public sector to change in the way we build public policies, or whatever was stopping them from developing thoroughly their initiatives in terms of regulations, in terms of I don't know, legal help, whatever, so that we would help them overcome these steps. So we are supporting organizations in transport and mobility, for local food and processors, repair cafes and the like, everything linked to repairing, reusing, whatever. Waste as well, local compost initiatives and whatever waste initiatives. We are crossing that with what we still do in terms of building awareness towards young generations, for one thing, and poor people, in particular, people who are kind of left aside from public policies regularly. We do, for example, have annual project bid for tenders, so to speak, for people in high school, for youngsters in high schools, to develop projects in terms of transitions at large. Obviously we inform them, and we are very in the high schools for them to know what we're talking about, and encourage them to take their own initiatives, and therefore get some money for it. So once they do that, we tend to kind of get them to relate with one another, reach out to one another, high school students who would set up an initiative, and whatever local initiatives would be set up in that particular area, so that they would match, relate to one another, and maybe for the project to take sort of more, you know, to become more important, because it would have more public or more possible development by being together. So that's one way in which we develop citizens' initiative. The other way is by encouraging as much as we can local citizens producing their own energy, so to speak. I know that other regions in France are more developed than us in northern France for that kind of project, because it's mainly solar energy that's developed in the rest of France, and obviously in the north of France we don't have that much sun, so we are a bit late in that matter. So we're trying to encourage that kind of initiatives as well by financing also supports structures. And we're looking into maybe developing a bid for tender as well for regular crop, so to speak, of private initiatives in that matter. And also we support local governments when they try to encourage local initiatives. It's better for us to go through local governments because, as I said, we are a region of 6 million inhabitants, so we are quite far from local initiatives and local communities. So it's better for us to work with local governments because they are more it's easier for them to identify local initiatives or citizens that get together and want to do things. And for example, we supported a little town of 5,000 inhabitants that wanted to set up their own participatory budget. They developed, they got people to vote for that budget. They got people to finance together for transition initiatives, and then vote for whatever their favorite project would be, either projects developed by the city itself or initiatives developed by citizens within the city. And one of the main projects that was financed was local production of energy, which is shared afterwards between the city itself in its own buildings and the neighboring inhabitants. Which shows that there is an interest for people to finance stuff. We are in a joint partnership with a national organization called ADEM, which is a national organization that finances energy transition projects, and they are experimenting at this time a project that they are supporting local governments into crowdfunding initiatives, but through local communities, which is a bit different to what we're trying to do, in the sense that it's not exactly a citizen initiative. It's more the citizen as a financer, possible co-financer into transition projects. It's a way of expressing your opinion, in a way, financing a project. But it's different to carrying out your own initiative, but still it's worth tempting. So we are the organization ADEM is trying that out for this term. They've set out the call for tender last month, and we're trying to see what it leads to. They're trying to develop crowdfunding through either on projects through transport or heat networks, underground heating networks, or local energy production as well. Some of them, costing quite a lot of money. So it would be interesting to follow what kind of project people actually relate to and are ready to put money into. That would be a good indicator for us on how to proceed further. Now, after 1 year of working through that mechanism of supporting other organizations to help out for the development of a citizens initiative, we are trying to freshen up, to sort of update our way of thinking, and we have a new member as well. We've had election in just before the summer, so it's time for us to take to watch what's been done and take lessons from the way we've proceeded, and we were probably going to develop new ways into reaching out to people who are in social or economic difficulties, because we found that it's more difficult for them to take initiatives, despite the fact that they are economically impacted by the price of energy, for example, and the price of food, and the consumption generally. It's better for them to repair, to reuse, to whatever. So we are trying to reach out to them and find better ways into helping them take initiatives. Obviously, the first step towards that is helping the organizations that reach out to them and help them into that kind of project, so that it would build awareness, and then the second step being them taking their own initiatives. But we are trying to develop that more. and probably also saving up more money for innovation in the matter, for citizens that would carry out projects that we hadn't thought of, or in fields that we hadn't anticipated they would, and stuff like that, so that we can help them in that particular way. For example, we have financed this year a project which is a sort of how can I explain that? It's an organization that helps people who want to create their own companies in the field of energy transition, help them develop their projects in terms of finding the right finance, study the market better, structure their projects better, and then employ them as when you have someone carrying the workforce for you, and sharing the revenue all together in a sort of mutual way for a number of years until they can carry out their own economical projects themselves. We found that pretty interesting. So that's one form of innovation, but we can find others. So that's probably what we're going to suggest to our members for a new framework for action.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I wonder how long these projects stay. I'm going to explain you why I asked you this question. It's because we have taken part in many projects in Eurada, and almost the only a few ones that are still ongoing is a project that we did that is called City Energy. That is something very similar, was to connect individual citizens from all of Europe with investment in energy efficiency and renewable energies by crowdfunding and by cooperatives as well. Not only crowdfunding, but people that owns the installation as well. And we finished the project 5 years ago, and still the thing is going because they take a fee about the people that are collected through internet. It's like TripAdvisor or something like that, and it's working well. So my impression is that things that are very bottom up from citizens that produce a lot of change stay very long, even if we don't continue pumping public funds to them. And that's why I asked you, do you have the same experience that this type of initiative that you are supporting provides a change?
The duration of life varies. For one thing, we don't have much. We've been doing that for two years now, so it's early days to be able to draw lessons. But it's different depending on the subject. For example, initiatives in terms of transport, individual transport, specifically especially when it turns around children to school and whatever, that is very short term, because obviously parents, and after a while they change. They go to a different school, and you need to start again, and you need to start from scratch, which is trying to build awareness first and then get them to develop things, and etc. On the other side of the board, producing energy is something that you get involved with on a more longer term issue, because you invest the money, it requires a bit of infrastructure and etc. So people they set up companies together, so they end up staying longer in the project, so that stays on longer. Now in the middle of that, there's different kind of issues, like for example, in a local community, there can be an initiative like building awareness towards the relation between energy and food consumption, for example, because related to people with social or economical difficulties. So you end up building awareness around that, and then they take initiatives in that particular field. But then the fact that they get together, that they start talking together, that suddenly they start building links in their own minds between that and the way the food is transported to them, and then they end up taking initiatives broader than just the food issue, and making other stuff, sometimes even creating their own local money stuff. And so that when that works out well, it can last for several years as well. We've got 2 initiatives around that in 2 different parts of the region that end up lasting a number of years, but it's early days for us to say further than that.
Thank you very much. In any case, it's incredible the flexibility of the government to be moved and to support very small initiatives, bottom up. So it is impressive experience. So congratulations.
Sometimes it can lead to even economic activity, because sometimes some of them end up creating their own company, which is probably insignificant in terms of the economy, French economy at large, but in the local community or in villages and etc. One job or 2 jobs, and they have their own activity, and it works out. And 1 job and 2 jobs in the local community, it matters.
I don't know if the colleagues that are in the public would like to make any comment. If not, I have one for Angela, very interesting, burning to me. No? Well, Angela, the thing is how to increase the participation in citizens in the decision process of the European Union, and as well to avoid the fatigue, because sometimes our colleagues from the Nordic countries say always that probably there is a fatigue. And I'm going to bring you an example, very clear. So last year we started with a conference for the future of Europe, which seems to be, in reality, is what we need. And this is my personal opinion. It's not the person of Jurada at all, but I think most of the members will consider the same thing. But it's to bring and to decide what we need as a continent and how we do that with a very strong participatory process. However, everything is so big, we are still listening things about the conference of the future of Europe. It's 1 year. I know with the coronavirus that make difficult for the people that are managing things to make big events and things like that. But how you imagine that you are a consultant? I know it's a very difficult question, but imagine that you are a consultant of these people. How we could engage better the citizen in the decision process and in the planning of us as in the European Union institution. This is something that worries me, not only in the local level, in the regional level, but as well in the higher level.
I think
it's a very good question, because as you said, there's always a fatigue and it's always difficult to keep people in the thing on long term. Very good question.
Yeah, I think that at the end, when the citizens have the opportunities to be on board, they are really enthusiastic because they see the value of these processes. And this is a long-term process based on trust. It's definitely a matter of trust. And you can accomplish the goal if you have high quality process, as I said before, if there is transparency, there is integrity, there is actionability. If you see that your idea, your opinion is really taken into consideration and is part of the policy process, then of course you can really think that it's worthwhile to spend Saturdays or Sundays to be part of the processes, or to try to provide your idea to create new initiatives, as we have learned from the experience in the Hôte de France. So I think there are so many approaches and good experiences involving citizens, not only in the decision making, but also in the implementation, to be a co-owner, to be co-creator, to be a co-designer of the public policy that can be implemented, supported, promoted by the public authorities. There are tons of methodologies and good experiences that we can learn and implement in our territories. But we really need to find ways to build up a relationship of trust with citizens with high quality processes. If you think that you would like to involve citizens just to say that we have involved citizens, but there is no added value, there is no impact of the involvement of citizens. You don't exploit by in the good sense that the opinions of the citizens can have a real role in the policy making. Of course, citizens will not be on board any longer in other processes because they really wouldn't see any added value in being part of the process. So you really need to be transparent and honest and to use so the added value that you can that can emerge from this kind of processes. And there is a great potentiality, great energy and creativity from the citizens, like end users and people really working and living in their territories. And so their lay knowledge can be absolutely relevant also for producing new innovation, and at the end possibly also new jobs, as we have seen, can be a great chance.
Madame de Préter, would you like to say something about the big, not the experience on Eau de France, but as well how to involve citizens in the big policies like the Conference for the Future of Europe? And I'm sure in France there are other type of action as well to do that. So would you like to make a comment? I thought that you were going to say something.
Well, we are, it's not only my department, we are trying to get them involved, as Angela said, more towards strategic development, like in particular on the climate issues, where there have been conferences organized in the past, and now trying to also get people involved into have a say into the regional strategy on climate, and also the local government strategies, because the overall strategies is declined locally. So the regional council is trying to organize that. I suspect that if there is a form of expression of the regional councils through that European say, it would be more through my colleagues in terms of climate than myself, because it's more on a broader scale on the strategic issues rather than on small community initiatives.
Okay, thank you very much. If we don't have any more comments or questions, I'm going to close here, thanking the two excellent speakers that we have today. Thank you very much, because you give us as well, not only the theory, but as well the practice, which is not so evident, even if it is your life and you are touching that, and for you is more common, it's not so evident for some people. So thank you very much. In this dialogue, normally I finish saying what are the next things that are useful for the people connected with the RRI community. And I would like to announce that we are going to organize the final conference of the Territoria project that will take place on the second half of January online. In particular, we will organize on the 18th of January from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock a session about citizen engagement, similar like this, but we will have different speakers and we will have a short question and answer, and it will be moderated by me as well. Then 2 days later, on Thursday the 20th, we will have a discussion about how we could bring institutional change and things that can last longer in the policies. And then on the next week, on the 25th, we have the start of the future of regional strategies. We are very pleased that we will have Mr. Mikel Landavaso, the Director General of the Joint Research Center of Seville, the platform of smart specialization and economic competitiveness, and as well Philip McCann, who was one of the researchers that make the theoretic approach to the smart specialization strategies as well. These type of things are implemented in many territories through the smart specialization strategies, and we are going to dream. I hope they told me that they will do that, not to think in the present, not in the near future. We are starting the 21-27 period, programming period, but to go beyond. So how will be the perfect participatory research and innovation strategies in a region? And these two experts, I think, will bring us a lot of information. So thank you very much again to the two speakers, and see you soon, I hope. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.